Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So there's a story brewing in the political world that's honestly kind of hilarious. If it weren't so tragic, California's high-speed rail project is finally supposedly getting serious. The California High-Speed Rail Authority just approved a contract worth $350 million. With track laying scheduled to officially kick off on November 30, 2026, one segment, about 22 miles, is supposedly going to be finished by the end of June 2027. That's the good news. The bad news, well, buckle up, because we've got 18 years of failure to unpack, and it's going to get ugly. This isn't just a story about a train. This is a story about American governance, about political dysfunction, about how WEV turned infrastructure into a jobs program for lawyers and consultants. This is a story about how we went from putting a man on the moon to not being able to lay 22 miles of track in 18 years. I bet the folks over in the UK running the HS2 project nearly choked on their tea. You know, the whole time everyone thought we were all in this together, joint procrastination, mutual delays, a nice slow grind, plenty of cost overruns to go around. A shared understanding that big infrastructure projects are just supposed to be disasters. It was like a support group for failing mega projects. And then California just suddenly gets up in the middle of the night and starts internal rolling, please. Let's not forget California's high-speed rail was first approved back in 2008. Initial budget, $33 billion, planned opening, 2020. That was the dream. That was the promise they sold to voters, a shiny, high-tech future where Californians would zip between LA and San Francisco in under 3 hours, sipping lattes and working on their laptops while the landscape blurred past. Meanwhile, China's Beijing-Shanghai high-speed rail, which started around the same time, has been running smoothly for 15 years. They're on their third generation of train sets. Third generation, they've basically redesigned, rebuilt, and upgraded their entire system 3 times over, while we haven't even laid a single mile of track California, not a single mile of steel on the ground, and the cost, it's ballooned to $126 billion. Let that sink in, $33 billion to $126 billion, and absolutely nothing to show for it. That's not a cost overrun. That's a black hole. That's a money pit so deep you could bury the entire state budget in it. That number is staggering. People joke, are you paving this thing with gold? Are the train cars made of platinum? Are we hiring astronauts to drive these things? Are we importing unicorns to pull the carriages? Are we building the tracks out of diamond-encrusted titanium? But hey, it's America, so we expect things to cost more, right? We're used to paying a premium for quality, for labor, for all the red tape, for the lawsuits, for the consultants, for the environmental studies, for the re-studies, for the re-studies, for the studies about the studies. Fine, we can accept expensive. We're Americans. We pay top dollar for everything. We pay top dollar for healthcare, for education, for housing. Why not for a train that doesn't exist? But 18 years and not 1 inch of steel on the ground. That's inexcusable. That's not expensive. That's theft. That's incompetence on a scale that would get any private sector CEO fired, tarred, feathered, and run out of town on a rail. If we had any rails, that is in the private sector. If you blow a budget by 400% and deliver nothing, you go to jail in government, you get a promotion. Even Elon Musk. You know, the guy saw a video of China's Chongqing East Station, looked back at California's mess, and totally lost it on social media. He claimed his boring company could build a hyperloop connecting San Francisco and LA for just 5% of what California is blowing on this disaster. Now, I'm not saying Musk is always right. The guy has his own share of wild ideas, his own share of overpromises and underdeliveries. But when he's the voice of reason, you know, things are bad. When Elon Musk looks at your project and says, I can do it cheaper and faster, you've got a problem. You've got a crisis. So here's the real question. Why is building a damn train so hard in this country? We put a man on the moon in the 1960s with slide rules and less computing power than my smartwatch. We built the interstate highway system in a couple of decades. We built the Hoover Dam. We built the Golden Gate Bridge. We built the Panama Canal, for crying out loud. We've done big things. We've done massive things. We've conquered frontiers. We've achieved the impossible, but a train through California's Central Valley. Apparently that's the engineering equivalent of climbing Everest in flip-flops during a blizzard while carrying a grand piano. And now that Trump is in his second term, what's his take? Well, his hatred for this project didn't start yesterday. It's a long-running feud, a personal vendetta almost. Back in 2019, during his first term, he pulled $929 million in federal funding. He yanked it right out from under them. He didn't just threaten, he acted. Then in 2025, right after he got back to the White House, he terminated another $4 billion in grants. That's nearly $5 billion he's personally blocked. His words, California's high-speed rail is a total scam. And for once, I actually agree with the guy. I don't say that often. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump hater. I just call it like I see it, but on this one, he's dead, right? He's absolutely correct. It is a scam. It's been a scam since day one. You know, the saying, some things don't weigh much until you put them on the scale, and then they tip 1,000 pounds. Trump calls it out. And suddenly the usual Smith commissioners start sweating, you know, who I'm talking about, the ones who've been feeding at this trough for nearly 2 decades, the ones who've made careers, built mansions, sent kids to private schools, bought vacation homes in the Hamptons, purchased yachts, all on the back of a train that doesn't exist. These are the people who've turned government contracting into an art form. California, of course, sued the federal government. What else are they going to do when you're addicted to federal cash and someone cuts you off? You throw a tantrum, you sue, you cry. You hold press conferences, you call it an attack on California, you say it's about states' rights, you say it's about the environment, you say anything to keep the money flowing. But Trump, he didn't flinch. He basically said, sue all you want. I've been in real estate for decades, I've seen it all. I've dealt with crooked contractors, corrupt city officials, and bureaucrats who couldn't build a doghouse. I've been sued more times than I can count. I've been through bankruptcies, through investigations, through everything. As long as I'm in office, you're not getting a dime. California's rail authority thought it over and realized picking a fight with Trump wasn't smart. So they dropped the lawsuit. Smart move. When you're holding a losing hand, you fold when you're bluffing and someone calls you back down. That's exactly why California's rail project is suddenly trying to look competitive. Not because they finally learned their lesson, not because they suddenly care about fiscal responsibility, not because they've seen the light and repented for their sins, but because they know they're on life support. Trump is now the strictest father this project has ever had. He's determined to strangle it. He's got his boot on its neck, and he's not letting up. He's squeezing the life out of it. So why is Trump so dead set against California building high-speed rail? Let me count the ways. And trust me, there are plenty. This isn't just one reason. This is a whole constellation of reasons. A galaxy of grievances. First reason, and honestly, this one's not even on Trump. California brought this on itself. This is self-inflicted. This is a wound they've been picking at for 18 years. A scab they keep tearing open. Approved in 2008, burned through over $15 billion in 18 years. With zero track laid $15 billion. That's enough to build a small city. That's enough to fund a war. That's enough to buy a small country. That's enough to give every man, woman, and child in California a check for $400. And what do they have to show for it? A few empty lots, some environmental studies, a lot of lawyers who are now very rich, a bunch of consultants who've bought second homes, and a whole lot of nothing. The Senate says it won't open until 2038. By then, not just the current president, but the next 2 or 3 will be pushing up daisies. By then, most of us watching this video will be retired. My grandkids might see this train if they're lucky. Their grandkids might ride it if it ever gets built. Even California's own experts are backpedaling, saying the route was flawed from the start, far from population centers, which means nobody will actually use it once it's built, because it doesn't go anywhere anyone wants to go. It's a train to nowhere. Permitting costs alone exceeded $1 billion. Environmental reviews dragged on for nearly 14 years. That's longer than World War II. That's longer than most marriages. That's longer than the entire career of many politicians. Design changes happened over 450 times. That's not engineering, that's paralysis. That's a bunch of people sitting in a room, getting paid by the hour, eating catered lunches, and coming up with new ways to change things just to keep the checks coming. Add to that California's legal system where literally anyone who feels slightly harmed can sue. And I mean anyone, your neighbor's cat gets scared by a construction noise. Sue, a bird flies in a different direction. Sue, a farmer's cow looks unhappy. Sue, a butterfly flutters by and gets confused. Sue, it's a litigation paradise. Here's a gem. Someone claimed the train would disrupt the habitat of a certain lizard species. A lizard so obscure you'd need a dictionary just to spell its name. I'm not kidding. I looked it up and still can't pronounce it. It's not a bald eagle. It's not a grizzly bear. It's not even a cute panda. It's some tiny reptile that nobody's ever seen in the wild, that most Californians couldn't identify in a lineup that probably doesn't even know the train exists. Because it's protected in California, the authority had to spend millions on habitat restoration across dozens of miles, millions of dollars, for a lizard. Then environmental groups fretted over mountain lions and monarch butterflies, saying noise and light from the trains would bother them. Turns out, when reporters dug in, that environmental group was registered to a law firm. Of course, lawyers doing environmental work. When human lawsuits get old, Just pivot to animal advocacy. When the personal injury market gets saturated, just start representing wildlife. I'll talk about principles. But underneath, it's all about the money. And the solution, just send the cash to the environmental organizations, problem solved for them. On top of that, there were complaints about ruined rural views and ugly utility poles. One single segment in the Central Valley faced 6 separate environmental lawsuits. 6 for 22 miles of track. That's basically one lawsuit for every 3.5 miles. You couldn't make this up if you tried. This is satire writing itself. Honestly, under Obama or Biden, this project could have kept limping along, pretty renderings, fancy videos, big slogans about green energy and the future of America, and the checks would keep coming. Those guys didn't know a construction plan from a coloring book. They'd show up for a photo op, wave at the cameras, talk about jobs and the environment. Say things like infrastructure is the foundation of our future, and then go back to Washington and sign the next appropriation bill. They didn't ask hard questions. They didn't demand accountability. They just kept the money flowing. But Trump, no way. You can say he doesn't know diplomacy or governance, and I'd probably agree with you on many days. I'd probably say he's crude, he's divisive, he's combative. But as a real estate developer, the man knows construction. He knows how projects get built, how contracts get awarded, how money gets wasted, and how to spot a scam from a mile away. He's been in the trenches. He's dealt with unions, with contractors, with city councils, with zoning boards, with all the bureaucratic nonsense that makes building anything in this country a nightmare. Remember the Woolman rink in Central Park. That ice skating rink shows up in movies all the time. Now it has Trump's red logo on it, and he loves using it as proof of his fix-it credentials. And honestly, he's earned that one. That's not bluster, that's not spin. That's a genuine achievement. And he's been dining out on it for 40 years. Back in the 1980s, New York City decided to build that rink budget $9,100,000 timeline, 2 years. Simple enough, right? It's an ice rink, not a particle accelerator. It's frozen water on a flat surface. How hard could it be? It's not rocket science. It's not even plumbing. 6 years later, they've blown $13 million, and the place was a disaster, pipes leaking everywhere, concrete torn up and re-poured so many times nobody could keep track, endless excuses from City Hall. Politicians said, oh, legal restrictions. Got to split contracts among 4 contractors, too many approval agencies, union rules, environmental reviews, historic preservation concerns. The drill, just keep funding us and maybe we'll figure it out in another decade. In 1986, before he was president, Trump had enough. He wrote the mayor offering to finish the job, not for $9 million, not for $8.8 million, but for just $3 million, out of his own pocket if he went over. He delivered the rink 4 months early and saved the city $750,000. Opening day was a sensation. Politicians looked like fools, and Trump became the city's hero. That's the guy we're dealing with now. Love him or hate him, he knows how to get things done when he wants to, and when he sees a scam, he knows exactly what it looks like. Back to California's train, it might fool Obama or Biden amateurs in construction, but Trump knows the game. He knows what a shakedown looks like because he's seen it 1,000 times, and even if the project were clean, which it absolutely isn't, which it has never been, he'd still try to kill it, because if Democrats pulled it off, who gets the ribbon cutting? Governor Newsom. The feds would get 0 credit, 0, the president would get nothing. And Trump, he's the type who takes credit even when he does nothing. He's not about to let a rival governor steal the spotlight on his watch. The feds have poured $6.8 billion into this thing over 25 years, and not a single train has run. It's obvious what's happening, right? Mr. Smith, Commissioner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The fix is in, the game is rigged, the whole thing is a racket. Someone dug up that one consulting firm, WSP alone, collected over $1 billion from California's rail project over a decade. $1 billion for one consulting firm. What kind of consulting is that expensive? Are they personally driving the trains? Are they laying the tracks with their bare hands? Are they welding the steel in the middle of the night? Are they designing the train cars from scratch? No, it's basically scheme crafting, finding creative ways to bleed the government dry. These firms write reports that nobody reads, design stuff that gets redesigned the next year, conduct studies that contradict the studies from the year before, hold meetings about meetings, and even help set bidding rules, so they're refereeing their own games, conflicts of interest. Who cares? It's California delays mean more consulting fees, and those costs get passed to taxpayers. The more complex the mess, the more they demand, and the more they demand, the messier it gets. The authority has to keep hiring the same people to clean up. So as long as the train doesn't run, These consultants are set for life. They're not building infrastructure. They're building retirement funds. They're not serving the public. They're serving themselves. They're not laying track. They're laying the groundwork for their own financial security. It's not that the federal government wants to punish California for fun, but California has become a Democrat stronghold. And I mean a fortress, a citadel, a bastion of progressive politics on everything from immigration to environmental policy. California fights Trump at every turn. In 2017, California passed the first sanctuary state law barring local law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration arrests. They basically told the federal government, you can't touch our people, you can't enforce federal law here. This is our turf, this is our sovereign territory. Trump responded by sending 2,000 National Guard troops to LA breaking. A 60-year precedent bypassing Newsom entirely. Newsom sued, claiming state sovereignty. The appeals court shot him down, affirming the president's authority. So with Republicans in the White House and Democrats running California, you think the feds are going to go easy. Cutting high-speed rail funding is just one weapon in that war. It's political payback, pure and simple. And you know what? Both sides are guilty. This is Washington politics at its finest, and by finest, I mean ugliest. This is the swamp in all its glory. For Democrats, high-speed rail is a golden ticket. Back in 2008, when the bond measure passed, the slogan was America's high-speed rail golden age. Plenty of big names built careers on that promise. Protecting the train means protecting jobs, green credentials, and leverage against the evil federal administration. California voters eat it up. They love the idea of being progressive, of leading the nation into a green future, even if that future never actually arrives. It's all about the narrative. It's all about the story they tell themselves. It's about identity. It's about virtue signaling. But for Republican voters, killing this boondoggle is pure anti-waste. Trump rants on social media, and his base cheers instant political gain and Newsom. He's practically the Democratic frontrunner for 2028. If he actually got this train built, it would be a massive gift to the Democrats and to Newsom personally. Trump will do everything in his power to stop it. Even if California somehow got it done in a year or two, he's not about to hand his political rival a victory lap. He's not going to let Newsom cut the ribbon on national television while he's sitting in the White House. Not a chance, not on his watch. Here's the bottom line. This train has become a no-win trap. Republicans need it to never be completed. Democrats need it to always be in progress, because Democratic politicians use it for votes, lawyers use it for billable hours, consultants use it to stay rich, farmers use it for compensation, environmental groups use it for donations, and Republicans use it to attack Democrats. America's high-speed rail isn't about transportation anymore. It's a wealth redistribution machine, serving only a tiny handful of insiders. It's not connecting cities. It's connecting bank accounts. It's not moving people. It's moving money from taxpayers to the well-connected. It's a jobs program for lawyers, a retirement plan for consultants, a talking point for politicians on both sides, and a complete and utter waste of time, money, and hope. And until we have the political will to blow the whole thing up and start over, that's exactly what it's going to stay. Until we have the courage to say enough is enough and cancel this boondoggle, we'll keep throwing good money after bad. We'll keep funding a train that will never run, for people who will never ride it, built by contractors who will never finish it, overseen by politicians who will never be held accountable. We'll keep the charade going because too many people are making too much money off of failure. All right, that's it for this one. I'll catch you in the next video.